Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Mjolnir at the Movies. I'm David Yorkshire and with me as ever are Neil Westwood and James. Hello to you two.
Hello.
Hello.
And this week Neil actually wanted to do something on David Cronenberg. He wanted to look at a history of violence, but there's not really that much to go at in this history of violence. So we sort of had a look at what we could do. I came up with the idea of doing Videodrome and eXistenZ because I see these two as, first of all, two of David Cronenberg's most interesting films. And also I see them as two films of his that are entirely related. And they have huge connections between each other. And in fact, I see eXistenZ as a successor to Videodrome in many ways. Don't know what you gentlemen think about that.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And the connection I seen was that it was almost like a updated version of Videodrome. It's about people who are engrossed with their TVs, snuff movies, videos they find on the black market. And eXistenZ is about people who are permanently connected, by an umbilical cord, this gaming console that they have, or this like Xbox type thing that's made entirely out of, I don't know, skin and animals. But it connects them to this thing that they just can't get enough of.
Yeah, I see eXistenZ very much as a successor, as if you like, Videodrome for the gamer generation. It's about that age, really. I mean, it's 16 years later than Videodrome. Celebrates its 20th anniversary this year, of course, and we're on the big episode 20 of Mjolnir at the Movies. So it's kind of a nice coincidence. Yeah, it's almost like we planned it, really.
Yeah, like we did plan it, though. Yeah, but it's amazingly ahead of its time, though. I mean, even back then, in 1999, I think it was made, gaming wasn't much of a big thing, not compared to what it is now, with Twitch TV models and like people like Jessica Negri, and they're famous for playing Xboxes in their bikinis. This movie deals with that as well, with the female character. She's almost like the Twitch gamer of her time, where all the men fawn over her. She's become this, I don't know, this model that all men want to have by their side. But at the end of the day, she's just this creepy girl who sits inside all the time, connected up to a computer game.
Who is this? Because I'm not of your generation, obviously, not of the gamer generation. So Jennifer Negri, you say?
Yeah, well, most people my age would probably know who she is, but she is basically an American blonde model with really big boobs, and she dresses in her bikini, plays some games on the internet while people watch her on webcam and send her thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars just to see her playing Mario Kart.
There's actually hundreds or probably thousands of these. You hear about them all the time.
Yeah, she's like a really good-looking millennial woes.
Oh, no!
Oh, dear. Oh, we've got millennial woes in there. Oh, dear, already.
Oh, sorry.
No, but PewDiePie started off as that kind of guy, didn't he? Playing games and so on for cash.
Well,
then when the women found out they could do it and wear their bikinis and their bras, they discovered that, holy shit, why do I need to go to university? I can sit in Twitch TV and play Mario Kart all day.
The difference is with PewDiePie stuff, he did videos that made money off advertising on it, while these people are doing it live and people throw money in the tip jar, like a cam girl kind of thing.
Oh, right. So it's just like porn, but for
geeks.
Gamers, really.
Yeah. Keep throwing money in and she'll sit there with the camera positioned oddly high and pointing down, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And they're always got bunny ears on, or they're dressed up in some ridiculous way to play games.
4chan
like any real girls,
most
girls play games probably sit at home in their onesies with their Hug boots on, not sitting about like that.
Then actually, eXistenZ is probably, as you say, it's ahead of its time. I think that the difference, way ahead of its time. I think that the difference actually between Videodrome and eXistenZ is that eXistenZ hasn't dated because the technology in it hasn't been invented yet. Or one of the things it is that it actually avoids conventional technology. I think that what David Cronenberg did was he realized his mistake of Videodrome. Because, even if you look at Videodrome, what kind of videos do they use? It's Betamax.
Yeah.
Betamax, so that went very quickly out of the window.
Yeah.
See, the thing is about eXistenZ. I mean, if you asked me to watch that movie back then, I would probably not believe that some kind of gaming device could be invented like that. Something that you've got to like sexually like molest in order for it to actually switch on. Some creepy thing that you got to connect to yourself, and you flick a nipple on it, and you're connected to this virtual reality world. But now I would think something like that probably isn't so far from being sold on our shelves. It was completely unthinkable back then, but now I can really see stuff like that happening because gaming has advanced so much since then.
And virtual reality is now something that is creeping into mainstream rather than just being a fringe thing that you have to pay a fortune for a ride at a theme park.
Yep. And even Videodrome, I mean, it's about this guy who goes on the hunt for snuff videos that he trades on or finds in the black market. Who would have thought when that came out that in just 30, 40 years' time, you could have a device in your hands where you could just access it from anywhere in the world? It'd be unthinkable.
I think as well with the Videodrome, it was set in a definite period with all the kind of contemporary culture, fashion and technology. Well, eXistenZ, you can get a kind of feeling of certain haircuts and clothes, but other than that, you don't really know when it is or where. It could be 40 years from now. And it's a bit more timeless, as Dave was saying there. And the technology is so far ahead, but still believable. It's played quite well that way.
That's
cleverly
right.
done.
You'll notice the difference between the two in that with Videodrome you have an urban setting, whereas in eXistenZ you have a rural setting. Of course, the rural setting is more timeless in that a city will change over time, and you'll notice the changes very readily.
Deliberate choice.
Yeah. So as I say, I think that he learned quite a bit from making Videodrome and how a film can date.
And of course, they even
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, they even came up with the thematic excuses claiming, oh, there's lots of these technology experts in this area of the countryside. So they had the excuse built into the story why they could contain it entirely to that area.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, a technology expert, someone who works on the web and the internet for his living, can live anywhere. And generally, these people do tend to live out in the sticks and so on. So it was plausible, I think. And also, of course, we have the fact that it wasn't real anyway.
Yeah, but you notice how it gave it away that it wasn't real. When you watch it again, you'll notice there's things that gave it away.
Yeah, well, the gun in the beginning gives it away.
The bit when they're in the car and you see the old sort of style black and white movie style footage of the road behind them. And it looks like it's been like projected on. And I thought to myself, Cronenberg had about $30 million to make this. He could have done a better job there. So that must have been deliberate to make it look like it was a part of a game, and it wasn't just a crappy looking set. Because that's what I thought when I first watched it was the set looks like crap.
It's small things that subliminally implant the idea of it's artificial in your head.
Yeah, but then I thought, well, it would look crap if it was a game because it wouldn't be real.
Yeah, that's
so it's really clever.
Yeah, the first thing, of course, is the gun that fires teeth. This this bioorganic mechanism. It's a gun but it fires teeth and so on. And teeth wouldn't kill you anyway, because they don't really have the ballistics of a bullet. So that was, of course, that should have, it would have hurt you. Would have hurt you a lot. And how, in any case, would you have created some kind of device that actually fired? It has to use gunpowder and things like that.
A big elastic band.
Yeah, exactly. And so in an organic, I don't know, firing device, would you call it? I don't know. But how would you do it? It's an impossibility.
Well, there is
that's
beetles that can fire things. They've got explosive chemicals in them.
True, yeah, that's true. Porcupines, of course, as well. They can fire spines and so on. No, you're right. Yeah.
When I watched it, I kind of gave it a pass, that weird gun, just because they've got the weird biological computer. So I thought, well, they've got this biological technology that's vastly ahead of what we've got. Maybe somebody came up with something. Although the whole point of taking that gun in allegedly was because it would pass a synthetics or a metal scan. I thought, well, why not a pointy stick and just jam it in them? Because he had all the time in the world to run up, and he held it about 2 inches away from her and shot it. He could have just jabbed a pointy stick in her.
That's true, yeah.
Staked her like a vampire.
I never thought about that, but yeah, that's true. But Neil is absolutely right on the background that went past in the car. That absolutely took me out of the film. I thought originally that was poor filmmaking, but then of course later in the film, when you get those characters and they go into loops and so on, and there's a commentary on the characters that they're badly made, then you realize that actually it's part of the simulation.
You're meant to be seeing the boundaries where it's not well defined, because it's not really what you're meant to be concentrating on. Just like real games, outside the edges, it'll be a fuzzy background that's just painted in, you're not meant to look at.
Yeah, that's right. Shall we have a quick rundown of the plot for people who've never seen these films?
With a spoiler alert, obviously, because I think these are massively spoiled. Massively spoiled if you don't watch them first.
Absolutely, and I would recommend that you really watch these films, because I think that they're interesting films, and we're going to come on to why I think that they're interesting films, and assuming that James and Neil will as well. Would anyone like to set off on Videodrome what the basic premise is?
Oh, you go for it.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you. Don't make me do it.
Right, well, basically, Videodrome, you have this... He's a small-time pornographer, really, is James Woods' character, Max Wren. He works for a television company, this channel called Civic TV, and they're a small TV company. And because they're a small TV company, what he tries to do is to give sensationalist stuff to the audience to try to bring in a market from the big companies. In fact, he's interviewed in the beginning, or near the beginning, I should say, by this television host who seems to be kind of a Mary Whitehouse figure. They have him on this show. He says, basically, it's a matter of economics. We're small. In order to survive, we have to give people something they can't get anywhere else. That's his defense of basically broadcasting soft porn and hard violence.
He's always constantly pushing the boundaries. You notice that's the theme. Desperate to get the next edge out.
That's right, yeah.
So he's obviously where he's heading with.
Yeah. But of course, there is also this idea that he himself likes that kind of thing. He's always wanting to push the boundaries of his own personal sexual experiences and so on. That he's a bit into sadomasochism, that he can be pushed further into those realms. So there is a certain amount of this idea that he has a personal interest in all this. Of course, this colleague of his, Harlan, calls him up and says that he's found this film that's been broadcast out of satellite TV. Originally, they don't know where it is, but it turns out to be, I think it's Indonesia, I think it is, isn't it? And then it's a false signal, and it's actually from Philadelphia. And it's basically snuff television, and it's called Videodrome. But by watching this Videodrome, these broadcasts, he starts to have hallucinations, and these hallucinations get worse. They become more sensory in all the senses that he has. So he starts feeling them and so on, and he gets more into it, whereby he gets a slot opens up in his belly that people can insert these videos in and control him. But of course, there are people who want to control him. This might be a hallucination, but there is a certain amount of reality to it, in that there are rivals who are fighting over Videodrome, and Videodrome is being used to control people and manipulate them into doing things. So you've got this guy called Barry Convex who tries to control him through his hallucinations, and he gets him to kill his colleagues at his own civic TV broadcasting company. But then, of course, he turns on Barry Convex himself and so on. In the end, of course, he kills himself. But there is this idea that people can control you through television. And this is one of the big ideas in the film. And certainly one that is very real, actually. People have talked about it in relation to certain CIA operations. Also, of course, communists in America were using television and film to manipulate people into communist ideas. This is why you had the so-called witch hunts, which were not really witch hunts at all in the 1950s in America, where you had Senator Joe McCarthy basically going through Hollywood, weeding out communists because they were imprinting communistic messages into film. And this was absolutely true. And it's been forgotten, or rather, history has been rewritten to suggest that there was no truth to this, when in fact there was a lot of truth to this.
A huge event came out with the collapse of the Soviet Union that proved a lot of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Did that not happen to Gary Cooper, High Noon actor? Was he not treated as a communist?
Because we've also got to remember is these folk that were claimed, they were outed and treated so badly. If you look at their work history or how they lived, they weren't sleeping in the streets, these Hollywood stars. They weren't hungering for money and food.
That's right. But this is a fact of all art in general. There is no art for art's sake. People imprint ideas onto texts. It doesn't matter whether they're literary texts. It doesn't matter whether it's the painted image. It doesn't matter whether it's film and television. People imprint ideology on these things all the time.
And it can be hidden in some subtext that you need to keep seeing and watching before it will sink in, like the Videodrome signal.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's hammered home. We've had this, of course, very recently. It's been the scandals where people have actually started talking about it because it's become so obvious in things like the Star Wars franchise and so on. Of course, we've got the new Star Wars coming up. We've just had the trailer. When was it? Yesterday, actually, I think. The new trailer. Yeah. And they've brought back Lando Calrissian. So, of course, the criticism was that there were no more good white male characters, no more heroic white male characters in the franchise. And so they brought back Lando Calrissian.
I wonder what the backstory is going to be for that one.
Yeah, well, anyway. So, yes, this has happened. And it's been happening all the time. And in fact, during that first interview where you have James Woods' character, Max Wren, and Debbie Harry's character, Nikki Brand, and then you have this other character who's there on a television screen called Brian Oblivion. And he says, he doesn't say during that interview, but later he talks about the battle for the mind of North America. He says that the battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena, the Videodrome. The television screen. Yeah, the television screen is the retina of the mind's eye. Therefore, the television screen is part of the physical structure of the brain. Therefore, whatever appears on the television screen emerges as raw experience for those who watch it. Therefore, television is reality, and reality is less than television. And I think that it's the nub of the film in a nutshell here. And it actually says exactly what sociologists have been talking about and mulling over for quite some time, this idea of hyperreality, that television and film is more real than the real.
Yeah. And, well, like I said, look at YouTube now. That's what that's become. We have celebrities on the internet or who are on YouTube who are on their own videodromes. And you remember the line from the film when they talk about the guy, Mr. Oblivion, he only talks in his monologues or in his videos. That's the only way he communicates to the world. I think a lot of these sort of YouTube celebrities are doing the same thing. They're shutting themselves away from the world, reaping the benefits, but being a voice to the public, their public, who will believe anything they say or give them any amount of money.
Well,
That's very true.
yes. And there's a lot of people, you notice, in power pushing for YouTube to just turn back into TV or cable TV.
Yep. Now
Yeah.
everybody's got a podium to deliver something on. And there's going to be people like Mr. Oblivion who takes advantage of that.
Well, of course, Brian Oblivion is dead throughout the film. And
That's right, yeah.
in fact, his daughter says, Bianca Oblivion says in the end, he was convinced that public life on television was more real than private life in the flesh.
Yep.
And
We just have to apologize there for ruining the ending for you.
We did give a spoiler alert.
Yeah, we did. I suppose.
Well,
Sorry.
no, that's in the middle actually. It's not
True.
really the end. But yeah, but it's very true that on YouTube this has become the case that these e-celebrities have become more real than your own friends.
Well, how often have you heard somebody watching a film and they say, "Gosh, look, he did that because whatever reason, he's an evil racist or he's because of whatever." And you say, "No, he did it because it's in the script." And when you say that to somebody, they go, "Oh," and you can see that kind of takes them a second or two to realise that, right enough, there was no real emotion or there was no real motivation. It's in the script. If the script said you had to do a handstand and sing Happy Birthday backwards, that's what you'd have done for the money.
Yeah.
But folk watch these things and they say, he did that because of whatever. And the trouble is that your brain doesn't know the difference between this being real and this being fantasy. So the emotional memory of that will then inform your opinions of the world around you later on. So if you see all these, for instance, evil white men doing evil racist things non-stop on TV, then that'll be your opinion even if you've actually got no real proof of it. Because in the back of your head, that's what happened.
That's right, because as Brian Oblivion says, the television screen has become the retina of the mind's eye. In other words, it is part, what we see all the time, it becomes part of us.
And you see the same with historians like that. What was that one with Orlando Bloom? The Knights one?
Oh, yeah. Last Kingdom.
That's
Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven, sorry.
I've heard historians complain about that all the time, being referenced by people as evidence for their belief in what medieval Britain and Europe was like. They keep referencing that film. They say, well, what are you basing the film on? And eventually it turns out it's this big, long cycle where the reference is itself. They've seen that film, so that's what it was like back then. And when people try and challenge them on it, they'll always end up referencing the same film again.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of people who claim to know a lot about history, or you ask them something about history, then they'll reference a historical film. And that's just sadly the case. A lot of people will reference a film or a TV show they've seen.
Yeah.
And I want to ask these people, what is it about that TV show that was enough to convince you about something? What did they do differently to every other source?
When there's no reason it should be any more true than Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Because it's just something you saw on a screen with no evidence.
And they say things like, well, they would never deliberately put something wrong out there to fool us. They wouldn't do such things.
That's right. And of course, we've got to bring up the JQ, I'm afraid, gentlemen. David Cronenberg is a member of the tribe, and he is very interested in his own Jewish background. He did actually release a film called "The Suicide of the Last Jew in the World," in the last cinema in the world. So he is very conscious of his own Jewishness. Now, of course, when we're talking about the battle of the mind of North America, and we're talking about it being fought in the arena of the Videodrome, well, who's fighting the battle? This is the question.
Mm-hmm. Who is fighting the battle?
And are the people fighting the battle on our side? Is it in their interest to fight on our side, or is it not? Are they of us? Are they part of us? Or are they foreign people entirely who have their own interests? So you have to ask this question.
Yeah.
And I personally think that David Cronenberg, he's throwing this out there. He's throwing it under your nose. That basically he's throwing deliberately subversive stuff out there. And this is one of the things why one of the major themes of his work is the transformation of reality. And you get that in both Videodrome and eXistenZ.
And of course, Videodrome and eXistenZ, what makes that connection even stronger is that eXistenZ was the first original screenplay since Videodrome, and he ends up remaking Videodrome again. So it shows you how important all of it was to him. He really wanted to tell all that and have all those themes out there.
That's right. Very, very much so. And you get a lot of surrealism in these two films. Did you notice, for example, although Brian Oblivion is meant to be dead, and of course these are just recordings that he posts all the way through the film, but did you see the fact that although he's on the television screen during that first interview, he reacts to what other people say?
Yeah. And so it always seems like he's even turning almost to speak to people.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. You know, he's turning exactly to where Max and Nikki are sitting, and he's reacting to the questions of the interviewer and so on, you know, and turning back to her and so on. So there is this idea that there is something meta going on beyond the actual thing that's going on in the film.
Yeah, it's like a blending of realities and what's real and what isn't.
That's right.
It's also quite clever in that it's revealing its own method of production as well, because they would have had a script where someone pauses, waits for the recording on the TV to talk, and then the other actor speaks to the telly recording, then the recording continues. It's showing its own method of production.
Yeah. So, I mean, the idea, of course, of Brian Oblivion, as Bianca Oblivion says herself, is that he saw it as the next phase in the evolution of man as a technological animal. And in the end, he was convinced that public life on television was more real than private life in the flesh. So he's transcended, if you like, and going on towards eXistenZ. The real name, of course, of the game is not eXistenZ at all, but TranscendenZ.
That's right, yeah. With the X and the Z. The X and the Z is like remember they reference that quite strong.
That's right, and it becomes the C and the Z.
That's right.
Just sort of going on a little tangent about that. What did you reckon about the spelling of eXistenZ then?
I'm sure you got something cooked up, have you?
Go on.
Yeah, you're damn right I have.
Go on now,
Go
for it.
I can tell.
We've heard you rubbing your knees for 5 minutes now, waiting to tell us.
He's busted.
There are two things. One is the fact that eXistenZ is existence in German.
Right.
So that's the German spelling, obviously not with a capital X and a capital Z, but with a capital E. But of course, if you're looking at existentialism and so on, this largely comes from German and later French philosophy. Also, you have the capital X and the capital Z. Well, that's like the computer keyboard. I mean, it's ZX, isn't it, rather than XZ on the computer keyboard. It's what the ZX Spectrum, of course, was named after.
Okay, is that where it comes from?
Yeah. You have an inversion of that because in dreams, of course, things are inverted.
Oh, okay. That's right.
So I think that's where all that comes from. And there is a lot of sort of existentialist ideas in that film, in both films, actually.
Because they do go into a sort of dream state, don't they?
That's right, yeah.
Where their roles are reversed. Everybody in the different seats, their roles are reversed effectively into something else. And they all become either pivotal towards that storyline or character development, or they don't.
That's right. And this goes back to a German philosopher called Max Weber. Max Weber had this idea of social actors and social action, in that you don't really have an essence. And that basically there was sort of a duplicity of meaning, really, in that in one sense you were a social actor because you acted in society, and so you made actions within society. But at the same time, you were an actor in the sense that you were not real, that there was something that it was just a role that you were playing on any given different circumstance, and that you would change who you were for that particular circumstance and who you were with. So you wouldn't be the same person with one particular group of people or person as you would with another, and so on, which is true in a sense. But to deny that one has an essence because of that, I think was very subversive. And of course, Max Weber is one of the founders of sociology, along with Karl Marx and Emil Durkheim. And these people, of course, have essentially started this idea of the inauthenticity of society. And they've really broken down society. They gave, if you like, an idea of, and they might not have been conscious that they were doing it, although Durkheim and Marx, of course, were Jewish. Max Weber was Gentile, but he studied under a Jewish professor who supervised his studies and so on. But in any case, they pretty much showed the building blocks of how society is constructed, but also on how they could be broken down.
Makes you think about the whole founding and discipline of it. Was it really intended to study what was there, or was it intended to shape what was there and what's to come?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I see in the films is basically that you have this idea of breaking them down, breaking the very building blocks of reality, breaking them down. And this is what things like post-structuralism and so on are all about.
The idea that you could just take somebody like water and pour them into a new vessel and they'll become that.
That's right.
Because it was just random people, wasn't it? They just became something that you would normally be incapable of doing.
And they do it layer upon layer, where, you know, they keep changing people's personalities. They drop them in as a boss of some underground thing next to a programmer, next to a basic mechanic or something. And the idea that you could just pour somebody in and they'll be exactly like that.
And if they could do that with people and give them roles and lines to say, and remember, there's a line, it says, well, there are certain times that they can intervene to the development of the storyline. So you could think you're the hero, you could think you're the bad guy, and suddenly, like, the powers that be who have written the game will completely change your dialogue anyway and twist you into like an avenue that you didn't want to go down. So the other people who are playing that game during the film, they must have all wanted to win it. They look at the levels they went to do it. They were just doing things that they would never be able to get away with in real life. Killing people, being sneaky, stabbing people in the back. It gave them the opportunity to be who they really want to be.
It didn't, because some of them weren't satisfied with their roles at the end, if you remember.
That's right. Some of them were a bit pissed off. They thought they weren't in it long enough.
But because that's the thing, real people aren't just able to be dropped into something and exactly be it perfectly and be exactly the same as somebody that grew into and chose those roles in normal life. It doesn't work like that with people.
But some people took advantage and
it's the same mistake.
Progress further.
It's the same mistake that communism made. They thought they could have a Beethoven in every street just by tweaking the conditions, forgetting the fact that you need somebody that's got that inherent to them.
That's right. And as Jonathan Bowden says, or said, I should say, it was his birthday just a couple of days ago, actually. But how can you have a society, you know, where there's a Beethoven on every street corner and a Mozart on every street corner, Goethe on every street corner, when you're leveling down and making everyone equal? Because the only way to make people equal is to level them down. You know, as he said, you'll end up with a society of ants, and that's very true.
Yeah, who wants there to be a Beethoven in every street corner? You want there to be one every so often. You just get bored of it. There would be nothing to achieve. There would be nothing to want to progress to be like, because everybody would be at that level anyway. There would be nothing that would separate you from anyone else.
Well, there's also a question that if you get to the point of a Beethoven every street corner, then I would say, well, who's then the one that's now levels above them? If you've raised everybody up in theory to Beethoven, you should then see somebody that's magnificently higher than them appear.
Absolutely right, James, because things are pyramidal.
Yeah, I mean,
and so you will get a higher pyramid.
Yeah, but that's how you look at art from the caveman to now. You know, you should be going up and up and up, but it shouldn't be. You know, you reach a certain point that was achieved hundreds of years ago by one guy, and then you just stop for the rest of the time.
Stop. Yeah,
that's right. This is progress in its proper sense. not in the leftist way that they talk about progress, but progress in its true sense is a good thing. That you always you want to build on the progress of your ancestors to progress even further.
Yeah.
But of course, the left want to denigrate your own ancestors anyway.
That's it. And think how many cases, especially in America, where you hear folk talk about how some relative came over and maybe was an indentured servant, and each generation worked, and then maybe worked to get them slightly more education, slightly better job, build up a business, till finally maybe they've got a good middle class living now. That's progress. That's moving upwards in a natural way. And why shouldn't you look back and be thankful for everything your ancestors sacrificed, no matter how far back you need to look?
That's right, and this is why honouring the ancestors is a good thing, because how do you honour them? You honour them by taking the lessons that they gave you in order to progress further than they did. It's like when Isaac Newton, for example, who was a terribly egotistical guy, apparently, in his life, and yet he said that I only see so far because I stand on the shoulders of giants, meaning, of course, the ancient Greeks, who laid the foundations of the science that he would go on to further.
And also, when you think of all these, the chains of ancestors, all the chains of events that lead to now, because history happened whether somebody likes it or not, and all of that history had to happen for us to be here right now. The person listening to this podcast right now, you could, one person could have got run over by a bus 100 years ago, and that person wouldn't exist, and so on. So if you've got this chain that's required to make us and to make us here right now, then obviously equality is impossible in the leftist sense. You can't have everybody exactly the same. You can't pour them into a mould and have them take on that shape, because it ignores the chain of people, the chain of generations, and the chain of events in your own life that were required to shape you right now. And you can't artificially form that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it does go against the idea that, to take it back to the film, the eXistenZ, where you could just drop somebody in and they'll be exactly like the role. They would come out saying, I'm unsatisfied with my role. They would actually come out like actors talking about something they've done in the theatre, rather than actually became a doctor, actually became a mechanic. They'll just be pretending.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. There is, in fact, in both films, this idea of being programmed. Well, I suppose
the assassination theme in both.
There is very
and the
much.
Weird
that's right. Yeah.
Body insertion horror thing, the invasiveness. Both of them had that as well. One with the spine, one with the front.
Absolutely, yeah. But this idea of programming, of course, you cannot program skills really. What they're talking about with programming is programming certain mentalities and programming certain actions, which is essentially what film does and what gaming does. It's there to program people into certain ways of being, but it can't program skills. It can't program you to get any better at a certain thing, because that is, on the one hand, of course, it's innate. In other words, you inherit it. And so that's something that the left can't get away from. You always talk about, takes after his father for that, or takes after his mother for that, or,
musical families.
That's right, musical families. Got that from his father's side. His father's not great, but several of his brothers and cousins and so on are, and so on. And so there's a certain inheritance involved in there. And the other area of it, if you like, is practice, simple practice. And of course, the right encourages both things, whereas the left hate all that. They hate this idea that because it's unequal.
Yeah.
The practice thing, I think that's infected a lot of people on the right as well. Because they've taken on this leftist assumption that you should just walk in and be able to do something. Well, if you listen to a lot of artists, they will say, it took me thousands of hours of practice to get good at drawing, painting, whatever it is.
That's right. I remember, I believe it was Jeremy Clarkson who said it. I know that he mouths a few right-wing ideas every so often, but I'm not a great fan of his. But Jeremy Clarkson, he said, I remember when we won the World Cup at rugby. I say we, England did.
Careful.
Sorry, chaps. But he said that, to sort of raise one Englishman up and denigrate another, he said that the difference between Johnny Wilkinson and David Beckham was essentially obsessive practice, because both had been born very gifted, but Beckham was obviously more interested in celebrity and so on, whereas Wilkinson was not. Wilkinson was interested in being the best rugby player that he could, and one of the best of all time, and he achieved that. And it took him incredible amounts of hours of practice. Apparently, he'd go out and he'd be kicking penalties, and he'd be obsessive. He'd have certain goals to reach before he could even go in for lunch. And if he didn't reach that goal, he'd be out there until the end of the day, and he wouldn't eat. That's how obsessive he was. But you need that. You need that level of obsession if you're going to get to the very heights, because natural ability will only carry you so far. And this is the thing about the film. One of the big themes is about programming and about free will as well. And in fact, the Jude Law's character, I can't remember, what is he called now, Jude Law's character? Extremely strange name. Ted Pikel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ted Pikel says I was going to say Sadie Frost. That was his former wife. Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, Allegra Geller. Free will is obviously not a big factor in this little world of ours. And she replies, it's like real life. It's just enough to make it interesting. That, to me, says something about the writer and director, David Cronenberg.
Yeah. These little telltale signs in some of his movies.
Personal opinion bleeding through rather than just a story.
Yeah. There's certainly a meta-narrative going on there that basically he doesn't really believe in free will that much. He said that at one time that he was an unashamed and unequivocal Darwinist. In other words, that you are absolutely controlled. You have this predestination that comes from the generations behind you. Well, I agree with that to an extent, but not entirely.
You get some people that take it to the extreme where it's essentially like ripples in a pond. There's no free will, there's no conscious action.
That's right, yeah.
From the Big Bang to now, sort of thing. It's just things bumping together.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the Big Bang theory, and let's be honest, it's just a theory. But I think it's a theory with a hell of a lot of flaws to it. Well, think about it. I mean, what? That the universe just came from nothing with this Big Bang? What caused
I don't believe it myself.
What caused the Big Bang? What came before the Big Bang?
Questions like if the universe is infinite, then it must either mean it's constantly growing, because it can't just be infinite, because that's nothing. That could go on forever and ever and ever. I can't contemplate that in my little mind. So what is it growing into? What is beyond that?
And I would have loved to have got Stephen Hawking back when he could actually talk.
He's dead now, isn't he?
Dead now, yeah. Say, died last year, wasn't it? He died. Yeah. But I would have loved to have, pinned him down and said, "Why are we conscious?"
Pin him down. He's not doing much in his wheelchair.
That's true.
We could shake him.
Take the battery out.
Yeah. Dress him up as a Dalek.
I can't believe it.
But it also, if you believe in something like that, it causes a tremendous mess with your mind for morality and law.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, how do you blame somebody for a crime if you believe they're just like marbles bouncing into each other or molecules with a predestination?
Apparently his middle name was Davros. I thought I'd get it. I was waiting for an opportunity. It's lost now.
So was I, but I forgot his name. It's like Thanos or Davos or David or something.
I see. I'm Davros now. I got you. Anyway, yeah, but it's true that I don't know. Do we put that down to his Jewishness, David Cronenberg's?
Yeah, let's do
it. No, but he has, and a lot of Jews have that they sort of look down on the rest of humanity as though they're the only ones who are human, and that they're the only ones who have free will and everything, and that the rest of humanity are sort of pawns to be moved around a chessboard and so on.
And what better way to do that? Make a movie about it and let you think that you have a choice now, and you can rise up against the system. And they put these little things out there. And I don't know why they do that. Is it for fun? These films like what we spoke about, Rollerball.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of become a rightist cult classic now, but at the same time, it was made by Jewish people with this, I don't know, this mockery of us.
Yeah, this Jewish hero that everyone sort of has this adulation towards.
Yeah, Jude Law. Jude Law.
No, Jude is very much an English name. Yeah.
Is he?
No. Jude Law is very much a white European.
Oh.
No. Jude is. Think about Jude the Obscure, for example.
Right. See, I don't know. I just assumed he was with his first name.
Sometimes you get names that sound like words. You've got to watch that, especially with different languages or old English stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
True enough. I just got like this compass.
Don't forget that I have the name of a Jewish king.
That's right. Right. We're on to you.
I didn't choose this name, but I got it sort of from birth. So there we go.
You just didn't get the crown with it.
No, I didn't. But of course, I will end up enslaving. Oh, sorry. No, I've said too much. No. Interestingly, talking about enslavement and so on, I noticed the terminology used that this Jennifer Jason Leigh character, Allegra Geller, and we notice, of course, the surname Geller, which is a Jewish surname. And
Uri Geller.
Yeah, exactly, like Uri Geller. And like Sarah Geller as well.
Buffy.
Yeah, that's right. But she has the master pod, and all the others in the seminar room have the slave pods. Did you notice that?
Slave pods. I can't remember that part.
Yeah, I mean, it does fit in with computer terminology, but it's obviously a conscious use as well. You don't. Yeah. They didn't fill the film. They could have filled it with all sorts of jargon, but they didn't. They chose certain words and phrases.
That's right. So, in both films, you have this idea of a slavery to the system, that basically you're not in control of your own actions, that you're given certain roles to fulfill. And of course, James Wood's character, in the end, his role to fulfill is to kill himself. And it's given to him by Nicky Brand, of course. Did you notice the little play on the name there, Nicky Brand?
No. I never noticed it. I always feel it when you ask these questions that I should know, and I feel really guilty.
You haven't been paying attention in class.
Yeah. Fuck, I missed it. I missed something.
Nicky Brand is the devil. She's, who's Old Nick? Old Nick is the devil. And Brand,
that's a Scottish way, yeah.
Yeah, and Brand is the German for fire.
Okay. Yeah, Old Nick is what we say in Scotland.
From where you get this idea of firebrand and so on. So she's, and of course she's in this red dress in the beginning.
And the red hair.
That's yeah, exactly. Which of course Deborah Harry is not noted for. She's noted for being Blondie.
That's right.
Someone's going to pick me up in the comment section now and say, "No, Blondie's the band and everything." Yeah, but it's obviously because she's got blonde hair. Anyway,
I know that bit of nitpicking.
I know.
It'll happen.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got to say that. But it's very interesting, when she, in that interview, she says, "I think we live in overstimulated times. We crave stimulation for its own sake. We gorge ourselves on it. We always want more, whether it's tactile, emotional, or sexual. And I think that's bad." And then, of course, she says that, yes, she actually craves all this stuff herself. So, in other words, she knows that it's bad, but yet indulges in it. And, of course, she indulges in it to the point where she gets involved in sadomasochism and everything, because she likes that kind of thing.
But we see that now with a lot of the internet stuff. You see folk obsessed with social media, porn, and so on, yet there's report after report in the news. Every newspaper will tell you how bad a lot of the side effects from these things are.
Jordan Peterson speaks about it all the time, doesn't he? He's obsessed by people watching pornography. He's always warning us not to watch it.
Does he?
Which
don't pay any attention. I've never listened to it.
And Varg Vikernes as well.
Yeah.
Which means they're probably at home whacking off 24/7.
Yeah.
But like Mary Whitehouse, he watches it.
Potatoes.
He watches it while tutting.
Well, if I had Jordan Peterson's daughter, I wouldn't look any further than my own family anyway.
Did
I just say that aloud?
Yes, you did. I am not a part of that joke.
I disavow before the podcast taken down.
I haven't got that in my notes. What's happened?
I think our subscriber count will go up after that one.
It was Nicky Brand. Nicky Brand's fault. Deborah Harry. This is the. Hey, did you know that she went out with? She knocks around with that. Oh, what is she called now? That Abramovich woman, that artist woman.
Oh, the loony. With I think she's some sort of priest thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh,
and she's been involved with sort of happenings and everything.
Yeah. No, that's some grim stuff. That I've seen pictures. That stuff. It's weird.
Yeah, that came later. What is interesting, going back to Videodrome, is that not long before this was released, I think it was the album Auto American, although it might be one of her solo numbers. But in any case, H.R. Giger. Do you know the artist H.R. Giger?
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy. Sorry?
Aliens designer, so on.
That's right. Yeah, designed the set and the alien itself for the film Alien, but also did a lot of artwork. I actually attended one of his exhibitions in Vienna many years ago. Dead now, unfortunately. Well, I say unfortunately, he's very much a leftist, but there's no doubt he was a great artist. And I attended his exhibition in Vienna. I wanted to ask him about the latent fascism in surrealism, but unfortunately, I couldn't get near him because he had all his entourage around him.
Oh.
But anyway, but H.R. Giger did this very famous portrait of Deborah Harry as one of his, what did he call them now? Biomechanoids.
Oh, right.
Biomechanoids,
yeah. And there's a very famous, I can't remember if it's a single or an album or whatever, but there's a very famous portrait of Deborah Harry's face being sort of mechanized and everything. And I think, personally, that's why she got chosen for this particular film, because there's only a couple of years earlier, only a couple of years prior to this.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah. Caught somebody's eye.
Yeah. She would have been implanted in teenagers' minds as being this rock star, pop star, punk star, whatever genre music she had, and now she was this face of this new kind of weird robot face cover, and it would have fit in perfectly because people could make that connection.
I didn't choose these films, just because you get to see Deborah Harry naked. I just want to point that out.
You see her nipples, people. You see Debbie Harry's nipples.
And she's got red hair, which is a plus.
Yeah.
She had a fucking amazing body actually when she was younger.
She's a very nice. It was a very nice look. I would still go on a date with her.
What now?
Yeah, well, even though she's like 150 by now, but I still would take her out.
Oh,
of course I would. On a date to like Nando's or something.
70. She's about 70 now. Dear oh dear.
God, that's old.
Yeah, you'd have to ask her to put her good teeth in if you don't
Okay.
order steak.
Oh.
Get some porridge and soup, but that's about all she can have.
This is a Cronenberg influence that's rubbing off on us. We're all saying sick things tonight.
That's true.
This horrible stuff that Cronenberg makes movies about, and
Yeah.
even the whole idea behind it, how this
Mhm.
programs people is worked on even us.
Yep, probably gives a good blowjob though.
Yeah, yeah. That's the main thing.
Without a teeth.
Oh,
Oh, no.
right.
Anyway,
That's it.
The line has been crossed.
Yeah.
This brings us on nicely to the sort of schlock horror aspects of Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Did you see how we made that transition there? That was, I thought, pretty well done. Anyway.
Like a lifeline, I'm desperately climbing up it to the side of the ship to get away from the rest.
I feel like Leonardo DiCaprio at the end of the Titanic myself.
But one thing you mentioned earlier, James, which was this idea of penetration. You get that a lot in both films. Particularly, did you notice the video slot in Videodrome that opens up in James Woods' belly?
Yeah.
And what did it remind you of? Go on, just say it.
Go on, James.
A horrible wound, I'll say.
A great big growler.
I am innocent. Oh, no, I can't believe you used that word. I'm innocent.
For the non-Scottish people at home, would you like to clear that up?
That's a lady's parts.
Yes, exactly. It does indeed look like a vagina and was meant to be that.
And the videotapes, they're all sort of like skin as well, aren't they? They're like living organisms. They're not actual videotapes.
Yeah,
They're like this weird skin type things that flop about.
That's right. They start off sort of bulging and moving, and then later on they're just totally flesh, the tapes. Very obviously all horrible and kind of bloody. Really nice, one thing about this film, practical effects. For anybody want to look at practical effects, there's some really nice ones. And when you realise how they're done, they're really simple. It's just a plastic thing being inflated and moved with airbags inside it, but it looks great at the time.
Yeah, I think it was Rick Baker, wasn't it, who done some of the special effects in that.
It was a good job.
All right, that's the guy who used to work with Botin, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, very much so. There's this idea of penetration, especially of male penetration, and you get this with the ports that,
and it's
for example, Jude Law's character has.
Oh, sorry. It's obviously sexualised in eXistenZ because you see the bit where he tongues it, and she does similar stuff, obviously getting a wee bit weird.
Yeah,
that's right.
She fingers him from behind, doesn't she? She sneaks up on him and like fucking sticks her finger.
That's right.
And he kind of jumps back in horror. That's why that film just made me feel really kind of dirty. The film was just a little bit too excessive with that, I think.
That's right. And you get this sort of vaginal fluid in these slots and everything all the time, don't you?
Yeah. And like I said, the little control pad, and it's got like these nipples on it that you have to caress in order to turn the game on. And what's that all about?
And even make the connector look, it's a exact copy basically of an umbilical cord, so you're getting this, it's all back to kind of a very biological birth, sex, that kind of thing connected to you.
Yeah. If you notice what they're doing is they're making things that are sexual and about procreation seem very unnatural and very disturbing.
Yeah, it almost like made it out to be this sinister thing that you should only get up to in secret, and if you are doing it in secret, you've got to get up to all kinds of deviant stuff while you're doing it.
Hmm. It's like, thinking sort of about our sex lives and so on. When you get the fingers up and everything, and you, no, I'm going to,
Right.
I'm going to have to bring it down to this level. I'm sorry, chaps, but I'm going to make a point here, because when you get the sort of the fingers up and you start stimulating a girl and everything, and you get that sort of sudden wetness comes down and everything, and you go ready and everything, and you think, we're in here. This is exactly. This
age-restricted podcast, first one.
So first of all, you have to get the old fingers out.
But isn't this the exact opposite? That you're meant to be disgusted by all this.
Yeah.
Don't make it. I mean, even when they're acting in a sexual manner with these things, it's showing on screen disgusting, or people. One of them always reacts disgusted. The woman reacts disgusted when Jude Law's character does it, Pikel, and he acts disgusted when she does it later on.
Yeah.
So there's always this. I can't remember which way around it is, but there's always this disgust one way or the other, and it's shown in a horrible way for the viewer as well.
Mm.
So it's no mistake.
That's right, and of course you get this idea of disease as well, that are transferred through these new artificial orifices that they have.
Yeah, it's almost like HIV, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah,
like that.
That's right, and yet she, this female character, this Geller character, contracted it deliberately.
Yeah, and there was that thing I was reading about. Somebody told me about people who, back in that sort of time period, would deliberately go out to try and get it, and it would be like a game to them that they avoided it.
That's right. This is very much something that goes on. I saw a documentary about this. On this character called Chemboy, and they call it giving the gift and receiving the gift and
bug
stuff.
Chasers.
This is that's right, bug chasers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd imagine there's some poor entomologist somewhere who calls himself a bug chaser and has no idea about the other meaning.
Yeah.
Catching butterflies and ladybugs.
Oh, that's horrible. But yeah, certainly, there's this definite idea of penetration, and you'll notice that it happens to male characters quite a lot. There's this sort of feminization of the male character,
like they're being violated against their will suddenly from out of nowhere.
That's
it could
right.
happen to you too.
That's
enslaved or weakened or somehow.
Yeah,
even the Jude Law character, he was second banana for almost all of it.
Yeah. Very much so. He's sort of the sidekick to the heroic lead who's female, really.
And always the one that's out of place, confused, he's also been used and abused a bit in weird ways. And pushed to do things.
And this is the same thing in Videodrome, actually, when you look at it, because the female character, the one who's, well, there are two, actually, were sort of empowered, and one is Nikki Brand, and the other is Bianca Oblivion. Because James Woods, he's clueless actually throughout the film, and even when he thinks that he's sort of the one in the know and everything, he's not. He never is.
It's interesting that such a cynical character in a pornographic industry would be so naive.
Yeah, that's right. And he's it's a weird thing because, of course, you don't sympathize with that character whatsoever because he's such a sleazy character. But yet, he's at the same time, he's been set up as a sleazy character by the writer/director, David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
And so you don't get that level of sleaziness, really, not the same level of sleaziness, even though she's far sleazier with Nikki. It's very odd. Or rather not odd when you look at, what Cronenberg's trying to do within the film.
Yeah. And his other films.
And his other films, yeah. But speaking of his other films, did you notice the little reference to his other film, Crash?
Oh,
I never know. Well, maybe I
he
did.
talked about an eXistenZ with a hit by a car experience.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
And there's a little game called Hit by a Car, the game that puts you in the driver's seat. Yeah, that's right. And
Oh, really? I
you know,
never noticed that.
you forget, although that's actually developed from a short story by J.G. Ballard. Although Ballard's is bad for this kind of shit, as Cronenberg is, and Ballard's a Gentile. I'll just point that out. So you do have these bourgeois, middle-class Gentiles who are just as bad as the Jews. Actually, if I really wanted to sort of talk about the JQ is really about what happens when an entire people goes bourgeois.
To the problems, the bourgeois culture and attitude, really.
I think so, yeah.
And that's why people keep overlooking it. But they sort of on our side, maybe not fully on our side, of course, because we don't think that way. But you get people that try and blame it all on one group.
Yeah,
and overlook our own people's flaws.
Yeah,
exactly. There would have been no Jewish problem had the bourgeoisie never existed within our own society. Although, to an extent, the bourgeoisie has to exist because you always need merchants and so on. But you can never have that as the ruling clique.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, ruling clique within society, yeah. Unless, of course, you're within other societies.
Although it's interesting when you look at other cultures who have obviously recognised this in the past, and you see quite often that class of people, despite their wealth, are often socially very low. It's like somebody recognised, well, we need something to counterbalance this enormous wealth and power, so they put them socially very low.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the bourgeoisie belong. They belong in a lower class of society. The problem is, of course, that they make money, and when money becomes the currency of society, if you like, and where you can buy people through money and wealth,
when governments bowing to banks.
That's right. This is when things start to go wrong, because money replaces morality. You see, this is why societies should be based on abstract ideas like heroism and aristocratic ideas, that you aim towards spiritual idealism and towards the elevation of your own people and things like that, which are very hard to pin down, actually. They can't be pinned down into materialistic ideas, which is why it's often so difficult to talk about them. And this is what the left always talk about. If you look at the left in general, whether talking about the liberal capitalist left or the socialistic left, everything's based on economics, the dismal science, as Thomas Carlyle used to call it, as opposed to the gay science. Gay, of course, gay in the proper sense of the word, meaning joyous. The gay science of the liberal arts.
But because what makes people happy isn't having a TV or whatever, because there's plenty of people commit suicide with lots of money.
Yeah, and I'm going to come on to that in probably about 5 minutes.
Oh, there we are. Great minds think alike. Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Before you do, what did you think of the Brian Oblivion's comment about the Videodrome moving evolution and causing the growth of new organs, etc.? Do you think that was all just part of the hallucination and fantasy, or do you think Brian Oblivion really believed that it would cause a physical and not just a mental programming change? Because obviously you start seeing all the hideous body horror stuff, but you assume that this is all a fantastical interpretation of whatever real events are actually happening. Like the tape going in is him actually getting orders, the people that scream when horribly mutated or damaged by his... Remember at one point the video pirate puts his hand in and gets it eaten and turned into a grenade. Obviously something else is happening in reality. We'd assume, this is all fantasy interpreted through his eyes. But I was wondering if you think that does Brian Oblivion really believe that this would cause some physical change as well? Or was it just a kind of a programming operation, subliminal programming?
Well, the interesting thing is that you never know what's real and what isn't, even from the perspective of the viewer, because as we've talked about earlier, Brian Oblivion in that first interview is a guy on a TV screen and is already dead, and yet he interacts with the people in that interview. Almost like it's a two-way screen, even though he can't, because it would be impossible. So there is an element of surrealism there, and there's that element of surrealism grows as the film goes on, until you, as the viewer, you don't know what is real and what isn't really, because it's not defined anymore.
As it goes on, you could be 100% fantasy you're watching. This is the thing. He could be sitting in his bed dreaming all this at one point.
Even the ending of eXistenZ. I mean, was that the real ending, or was that part of the game?
Could it be another layer? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, give it some credit. It also did the whole layers of reality before the Inception.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to imagine that whoever came up with that Inception didn't watch a Cronenberg film before they made that.
Well, this, of course, came out around the same time as The Matrix.
True, yeah.
Yeah, late 90s.
So, 1999, as I say, it's the 20th anniversary.
That's right, yeah.
So, so it's absolutely the same time as The Matrix. So the two films must have been filmed, literally in parallel.
Yeah.
That sort of thing was popular, though, right? I've said this before many times, but this is alternate realities, different realities, alternate dimensions. That was all really popular up until about 2001, September 11th, where people stopped kind of worrying about that stuff. Now, Dark City came about the same time, 97, 98. Different realities.
Dark City.
Yeah, false realities. Never knowing if you're truly escaped or not.
It's
like a hidden power above us.
It's the layers of it, though, that's quite good, because you get that cliche where you wake up but you're still in the dream. You see that one in films mentioned quite a few times, where somebody wakes up from the nightmare and they turn around, they're still in another nightmare, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That you see that as a scene, but it's nice to see. It's interesting to see it as a whole film, layers of reality done. And I think eXistenZ did it better than Inception did.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just looking at the dates of release. The Matrix was released on March the 31st, 1999, whereas eXistenZ was released on April the 23rd, 1999.
Oh.
So 3.5 weeks later.
Overlapping, really.
Yeah.
For cinema audience.
It may go some way into why eXistenZ doesn't do quite as well as it should have, but equally I think that they're very different films as well. I mean, this is one of the things actually about Cronenberg, which is very interesting, in that a lot of his films are box office turkeys,
Yeah, like they mean nothing.
Yeah, and you have to wonder who's propping them up.
I always wonder that, like, how some of these films keep going and how people keep getting the money. But apparently there's some of them get the money because they're looking for a tax write-off to bring on board. This is apparently a thing. And there's some directors who specialise in this like that. I've heard Uwe Boll, who makes turkey after turkey, just constant flops, terrible films based on like computer games and stuff. And they're all terrible and they all sell really badly, but he keeps getting millions. But it's apparently a scheme to offset taxes. It's worth their while putting, let's say, $1 million into that, so they then don't have to pay $10 million in taxes, because they can say, "Oh, look, we had a flop that brought down our earnings."
That's true. We mustn't forget, actually, that David Cronenberg is Canadian and not American, and so in America, of course, they have to make profit. Whereas in America, perhaps there's some kind of tax break for them. Certainly, the Australian film industry has that.
In Germany, there's
people
a huge incentives for it. You can get massive amounts of money from the government that half pays for these things, so it's actually worth their while having a flop.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I remember one of the stories about, we were talking about the Big Breakfast earlier off air. And of course, one of the famous guests of Big Breakfast was Michael Hutchence. I don't know if you remember that episode. You're a bit younger than I am.
I can remember Paul Yates was on the couch.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah. But Michael Hutchence, he used to invest in the Australian film industry so that he wouldn't get taxed to death. Because eXistenZ, of course, were the biggest band in Australia at that time, well, with the possible exception of AC/DC. But he invested in a certain film. Can you guess what the film was?
Mad Max?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
And so he got absolutely fucking hammered in tax because it made such a profit.
The
Oh, I
B
see.
movie
Oh, wow.
hope would flop.
That's right, yeah.
Oh no.
Poor Michael.
I'd imagine he was crying into his gold plates that night.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thinking about how much the film actually made, I think that this is a bit of a false story, to be honest, in that the profit that he gained from that film far outweighed the tax bill. But anyway. But yes, coming back to the corporate aspect of things, did you notice the corporate aspect throughout these two films?
Yeah, very heavily hammered home. In eXistenZ, they constantly mentioned the brand thing, with the brand officers that were around.
Yeah.
And that was just for the viewer to hear them use the jargon and get that idea that, this is a product. It was constantly, talking about products.
That's right. And, there's this idea of corporate espionage and so on going along with this. Although, actually, that's only really within the denouement of the game itself.
Although, even when they went into the next layer down in the fantasy, when they went into, remember the shop with the game selling the hit by a car? Where do they end up? It's a shop, it's commercial, it's selling stuff again, there's brands about you. So the first thing you drop into is yet another layer of commercialism straight away. And that's the hub.
That's right.
That's the hub for the whole story, where they meet their agents and talk to people.
Yeah, absolutely right. And of course, in Videodrome, you have these two rival companies going at each other, and for the control of Videodrome and everything, and they're setting James Woods against each other and everything. It's there is this idea that corporate America is quite self-destructive, and I would agree with that. Actually, I would agree with that. And coming back to our ideas on the right, you have to again subordinate the merchants to higher powers. Speaking of higher powers, you have in both films this idea of a new religion. Did you notice the settings for both of the films? Like, for example, where does the film eXistenZ begin?
A sort of
Church.
town hall or something like that, or a church or something like that. Yeah.
Definitely a church. You've got stained glass there and everything.
And
Is there?
pews.
Okay. That's right, pews. Yeah, because
also-
they see the pews towards the end of their gaming trip, or whatever you want to call it, and she sees the line of pews in the ground.
Mm. And where was Brian Oblivion's hangout?
Oh, of course, it was an old church turned into a homeless shelter type situation.
Yeah, did you notice the name of the place?
Nope, go for it.
The Cathode Ray Mission. so
A good pun.
again, yeah, exactly. So there is this idea that these two things, either gaming or the television, they're replacing the old religions.
You could also be saying maybe that even though they're changing, they're effectively the same thing. They're just trying to get your money and your attention and get your subservience and get you plugged in every Sunday but except you can get plugged in straight away at your house. Either way, you're connected to some kind of contract in many ways.
I think that you're right in eXistenZ, but in the other film, Videodrome, there is this idea that there's a mission statement as well, that there's this idea that they're converting the people. There's this idea that they're actually brainwashing the people into a new way of thinking.
The same way they converted him into this willing slave and assassin.
Yeah, exactly.
And they do talk about him being the experiment before trying it on larger audiences.
Yeah, very much so.
And you're going to wonder with the mission if they're doing the same thing on the tramps. Remember that each one got a television in his wee booth. It makes you think that she's playing her own game, trying out her version of it on them. Because who would really think, well, the priority for a homeless person is to give them a television?
Yeah, that's right. So, as I say, in Videodrome, there's this idea that it's not really corporate at all, but a charity, but not really a charity that is beneficial to people in a way. There is an idea that they're actually creating people who are loyal to this new way of thinking and this new church. When we looked at Rollerball, we talked about sport as a religion. And I think that that's what's going on here. I think that what we've got are other forms of religion within postmodernity.
Which maybe not an inaccurate criticism or statement, the way people pour belief and take lessons for life from it. I mean, how many people watch soaps and TV and then take on life lessons from it? Now, when in the past it would have been religion that would inform them.
Yeah.
You've got all these parables playing out in front of you 24 hours a day.
Yeah. And you notice that there's a lot of religious, especially Judeo-Christian themes within it. I mean, we talked about Nikki Brandt earlier, but I think equally there's this idea of Eve within the film. If you notice that women in both films are they're the Eve character who leads the male lead astray. Did you get that feeling at all? Yep.
Because with Debbie Harry's character, she helps push even the reluctant pornographer into further depths, and of course you've got Pikel, who doesn't have the port in that level of reality anyway. He doesn't have it. She
talks him into it,
Yeah, he plays quite a pure, simple man. And she's the one that's also been quite creepy, touching him and stuff in that level of reality. She's sexualizing the port and so on.
That's right. So you have this idea of a religious perversion of sexuality and so on. It's very subversive, actually, and we talked about the subversion of sexuality before, and also the subversion of things that are natural. And you get this subversion of the organic as well, in that things are created that are synthetic or mechanical.
Yep.
That replace the organic.
You get that both in Videodrome and repeatedly in eXistenZ with the machines, the trout farm, and on it goes.
That's right. And so there's this idea of transhumanism as well in there, which again is very popular on the left.
It's also, if you think about it, it's also these gaming things that they have. It's like a baby on the end of an umbilical cord. I think they're called ambi cards, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they care more about that than they probably would with an actual child.
Well, look at the programmer, what was her name herself? She obsesses over this biological construct and weeps over it like a child. But yet, in that same level of reality, she machine guns that doctor quite happily and just laughs and says, "Did I win?"
Thinking about it, are there any children in either film?
No. It's a thought. None. Certainly none in Videodrome. In eXistenZ.
That's right. Sex becomes just a In a way, it's voyeuristic. In another way, it's kind of perverse and it's subverted, as we've talked about. There's this idea that it's unnatural.
Well, it's taken
and
further.
that it's this disgusting in a way.
Yeah. And look at eXistenZ, where you get Pikel and her together in the hotel room, sharing a bed, and their instinct is to play with this pod. You know, you'd think surely a guy that with this woman that's been flirty would have other ideas. You know.
That's right.
But
although, of course, it's a bit of an act in the end, because when they come back to their own bodies and so on, we find out that they're actually a couple.
Or were they?
Or are they? Are they?
The thing. We don't know. We don't know which part is real, which isn't really by the end.
Well, that's very true. Yeah. I got the feeling that the end was true because suddenly the pods and that kind of thing, they go to the plastic rather than to the organic. Yeah, that's right. So more conventional kind of things.
And even things like the guns they use are conventional guns, just hidden with a blanket basically under the dog. It's more realistic.
That's right, yeah. Although, as you say, we could be wrong. They could actually, it could just be another layer within the game. Who knows?
And even the Chinese fella at the end questions it. He says, "Are we still playing the game?"
Yeah. One of the things that I want
to just jump in. That's one of the reasons why I think if they ever make VR that real, I'm never going to touch it. I will go to my deathbed quite happily, never touching VR if it ever gets remotely realistic, just because of that danger of not knowing what's real anymore.
Well, yeah, but this is
creepy.
the thing. Yeah, we've talked about the internet before, but this is the thing. People are getting more and more. We have this word now, autistic, which doesn't really mean someone suffering from autism anymore. It means someone who's sort of out of touch with reality and who lives in this e-reality all the time.
It's a weird bubble of their own.
That's right, yeah. And we talked about e-celebrities and so on.
They don't exist in their own wee circle.
Yeah. And don't do anything in real life, actually. They just live on the internet all day. And so they've become sort of Brian Oblivion characters.
Yeah. Especially to the people who obsess and fawn over them. For them, they are just this videotape playing. There's no real interaction.
No, that's right. But this idea that they can get someone, and I've seen it before, that these e-celebrities answer them in a comment section or something like that. And they're so pleased. They're so pleased. That,
like a dog getting petted by the master?
Yeah, very much so. It's extraordinary, this virtual world, this virtual reality that they all live in. And so actually you realize that David Cronenberg was right on some things.
Yeah. He predicted a lot of behaviour before the systems were in place to make it possible.
Yeah. But did he predict it, or did he sort of usher it in? Ooh. Because art often precedes life. Yeah. And this, of course, is the importance of art, in that art, it doesn't just reflect the way life is, but it pushes you in the way you want to go, or sometimes in the way you don't want to go, especially if alien and antagonistic peoples and forces and so on take control of those arts.
Who's guiding the flow and currents of your culture?
Exactly right. Yeah, this is why an organic culture, and I often go about it and I get boring with it and so on, but this is why I do go on about it so much and why it's important.
Because it informs the normality and the morality of tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly right. What do you think about the morality of these two films?
I think for me, the films are made by a guy who was intelligent enough to know that if there was such thing as illegal traded videos on the black market, or these games that you could plug yourself into, most people are not going to want to see like an adventure film with like light swords or whatever, or lasers. Are going to want to see a sex film because that's what things will develop into. If you give people enough time and enough sort of experience with technology, they'll create something that can do the same job a woman can do, but you don't have to pay for it. You don't have to take it out for dinner. You can just plug yourself into it. And that's what the sort of state society will degenerate into.
Nothing but sensation.
Kids sitting at home, but nothing, exactly nothing but plugging themselves into these PCs or game cubes or whatever and getting off over some virtual woman. And that's what it'll develop it into. People actually spend hours playing games where you walk through forests. They would never actually go to a real forest and experience it.
Yeah.
They would much rather do the virtual version where they don't have to go outside, where they can get a microwave meal on the way while they're playing away. They'll never go out and do the real thing, though. And if you get people like that, you're going to get people who are going to indulge in the sexual way, too.
Yeah. I mean, how many people have spent thousands of hours in Minecraft but never built a treehouse or something?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad, isn't it, when you think about it? You could spend all that time in a game that building things that don't even exist, that could get wiped away in a blink of an eye, but you won't experience it for real, the real joy of it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And eXistenZ kind of tapped into that a couple of times, and the parts that made me quite confused as to what was real and what wasn't, when she's like kicking the dust on the side of the road, and it's flowing into the air, and she's smiling and she's touching things that she's probably never touched before because she never goes outside. Was that?
Yeah, that was like somebody impressed by the virtual reality of it. That's what I thought when I was watching that, was somebody testing the simulation.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought that was about. Same with the weird mutant that came up. Although she gave an explanation in it, I thought that was maybe just something weird or a glitch in it. It was just because, remember, that was an unreality level. So you're seeing this weird two-headed dragon thing that appears out of nowhere. No explanation for it.
That's true, yeah.
And she just explains it away. Oh, well, it's some kind of mutant that escaped. But it's a bizarre creature and explanation. And everybody just sort of accepts it. They've never seen it before, but they just accept it, when, of course, in real life you go, what the hell is that? This tiny two-headed dragon, you'd freak out with this.
That's right, yeah.
Especially as you see everywhere around them is otherwise normal. The gas station is a perfectly normal place that we could see today. But then you've got this two-headed miniature dragon walking about.
Yeah.
But going on from the bit about touching things and everything, did you notice how tactile the films were? Or what is it, for example? Why are things so horrific in the film?
Why are things so horrific?
Yeah.
You mean like gory and brutal and so in your face?
I'll tell you what I think and what impression I got. The thing is that you can actually feel the things in the film almost.
Yeah.
When he reaches into his stomach, you get that sort of knot in your stomach.
Yeah. Same with the mucking about the needles and things and the cigarette burns.
When the things come through his hand and like wrap around the gun, that made me squirm a little bit. That.
Yeah.
It's low level.
You can almost feel it, and the thing is not just the horrific aspects, but the things like when he pushes his face into the screen, when James Woods goes to kiss the television screen, when the lips come out at him. Did you notice that?
It's a good effect.
And sort of envelop his face and everything, and you can almost feel it.
I remember. I remember it.
Even though you wouldn't know how that felt, you have an idea of how it felt. Did you notice that?
I don't know. I remember when I was a kid, I used to press my face up against the screen all the time. So I can kind of imagine that kind of buzzing feeling you used to get on old TV sets.
Oh, yeah.
All the hairs on your face stood on end and stuff. Yeah, so it would feel like that a little bit. So I know what that feels like. I don't think modern TVs can do that, though, do they?
No.
No, that's true. I mean, we did that as kids and everything. That's different. But there's a difference with the screen that he goes towards, and that is that the screen comes out towards him.
It's a big rubber sheet inflated out with a projector behind. It's a great effect.
It is a great effect. Absolutely.
And cheap. I mean, somebody could do that now for like 20 quid, probably.
Yeah. But would you have felt the same as you did when you were a kid, pushing your head against the screen just to feel the static?
No,
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would.
because
But
his
it
was
would-
soft rubber, and that was obviously a soft rubber he was pressing against. He saw it move in as he touched it, and around him.
That's right. You know, it enveloped his face. This is the thing.
It wasn't a hard
But
glass.
would it feel the same though, with the static and the buzziness?
And this is the thing, that there's a lot of things in these both films actually, that you have certain scenes and images where you have images, but you have feelings associated with those images, but you would not know how they felt because they're so unreal. But yet, at the same time, you do have a sort of idea how you think they would feel.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
Yeah. All this violence or disturbing moments were at least on a level that you have some commonality or past experience that you could imagine what it felt like. It's the same reason why the violence in the 1975 Rollerball was great, because it involved punches and falls that you could imagine, because everybody at some point's been hit by something or fallen over. While in a lot of things like The Matrix, let's say, you can't imagine what it's like to spin through the air at 200 miles an hour and smash through a concrete wall. It's ludicrous. I can't imagine it. Well, somebody falling over and hitting their head, somebody getting some weird, like a needle pushed through them. I can think, oh, I've stood in something once, or I've had something pushed into me, or I had an inoculation or something. I can imagine what that felt like.
Yeah. Yeah, even though it's an unreal experience, you have a sort
there's something to connect you to,
or sort of connection to it. That's
one
right, yeah.
sort of degree of separation. You know, you can take
That's
that
right,
leap of imagination.
Yeah, and this is something that, again, going back to sociology and so on, they've come up with a term for this called haptic cinema and haptic visuality. In other words, you have a sense of, although you're seeing something, you're touching it at the same time. You're having feelings beyond that visual experience. Even though it's just a visual experience, you can actually feel the thing at the same time. This, as far as I can trace, it comes from this Jewish.
There we go.
This Jewish media studies professor called Laura U. Marks. But the idea itself goes back to Gilles Deleuze, who was a French post-structuralist, and he wrote this treatise called Francis Bacon, The Logic of Sensation. You know the artist Francis Bacon, of course. Very famously appears in Tim Burton's Batman, where the Joker, of course, leaves that painting alone because he rather likes it. I'm
just laughing at the idea that Francis Bacon's pinnacle of achievement is appearing in Batman. That's now his corpse can rest.
But the idea is that, and it's a big one from the left now, and as far as I'm aware, this Gilles Deleuze started it, who rubbed shoulders with people like Althusser, who was one of the big deconstructionists and so on, because the theory of deconstruction really rubs shoulders with post-structuralism. They're pretty much going in the same way, and Gilles Deleuze, he wanted to write a big book on Marx called The Great Marx. So this is where we're going with all this. But the idea of the logic of sensation was that sensation triumphs reason, and that the new cult of the logos, if you like, was to be based upon sensation and not on reason. And this, I think, is what you're getting in David Cronenberg's works.
Yeah.
In
Very much
all
so.
things, that reason is completely undermined and sensation is foregrounded as the new logos.
Even above identity.
Absolutely, especially above identity.
Hmm.
So, this is sort of one of the big reasons why I chose these two films, actually, because I wanted people to see where we're going and where this has come from, actually. And that this is a lot longer than people think that this has been going on. Because a lot of people think that the current trends in cinema, where there's no reason and where everything is based on feeling, and even in academia and so on, is quite recent. It's only about 10 years old. The cult of SJW and so on is about 10 years old or something like that. But that's not true. It's gained
gone on a lot
ground.
longer.
Yeah, it's a decades long and longer.
That's right. It's gained ground in the last 10 years. That's absolutely true. But it's been going on a hell of a lot longer than that. And what has foregrounded it has been the arts, and especially cinema. So
Yeah.
what happens is, generally, the theory comes first, the arts second, and if we're looking at leftist ideas anyway, because the leftists are always theory-based, whereas the right always has nature on its side, and so we don't need theory. But anyway, from the left, it goes theory, arts, academia, mainstream, in that sort of chronological order. And so when we're looking back at 1983?
Yep.
Is Videodrome?
Yep. Very special year for somebody here.
And yeah, so this is a hell of a lot longer than people think. It's been going on a lot longer than people think.
It's just been
Yeah.
like, if you ever look at a exponential growth curve of bacteria, it's a fascinating thing to see how 90% of the graph looks like a flat line, and then suddenly see this line shoot up. But the line can't shoot up at the end with that rapid, obvious growth without the 90% that precedes it.
Absolutely right.
You know, when the bacteria is 1, then 2, then 4, then 8, all those numbers, 1, 2, 4, 8, you'll never see that with the naked eye. But then when it starts going 2 million, 4 million, 8 million, then it suddenly becomes a problem.
Yeah, absolutely right. And this is why looking at the arts, and especially looking at the contemporary arts, and even the theory and so on, especially the theory, is all important. Because this is what they're planning for the future.
And if you can spot the roots of now, then you can also tell what's coming now, what's coming in the future from this point.
That's right. And so when we talked about that Abramovich woman earlier, and the shit that she gets into her art, that is the future.
Well, that's some really disturbing stuff too, if anybody looks at it. Really freaky stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what elites and the artist types and the cultural controllers are indulging in. And that should really worry people. These people aren't without influence.
That's right. But this is also, of course, the reason why the fight back in the arts is also important. So we shouldn't just study our enemies. We've got to actually battle against our enemies. And this is why people on the left and also on the false right take an interest in what we are doing and try to, try their best to stop what we're doing. And if you have a mind to think, well, I would like to stop what the left is doing. I would like a vision of society that is more natural and decent and organic and white and European and so on, then please help us. Both you can either get on board with us, or you can share what we're doing on social media and so on, and disseminate the ideas that we have.
That's the message of the movie and Videodrome, isn't it? Use the tools that they give you and use it against them. I'm sure that was the final thing she says to James Wood's character, right? Use the tools and the gifts that you've been granted and use them against them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can build an alternative that we want, we think sensible, that we hope more and more people will jump on board with. You've got to build an alternative. You can't just complain about what's there and then expect people to all magically flip over to something that isn't built yet.
Yeah.
That's right. So, Brian Oblivion, he has his cathode ray mission, and we have our Mjolnir mission. And with your help, we will, of course, win.
Yeah.
And so, gentlemen, if there's nothing to add.
Not for me. No, it's a good podcast, though. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed watching those movies.
Yeah, well worth watching. And well worth subscribing to us for more content in future.
Absolutely. And as I say, please disseminate the podcasts that we do and also the art that we do.
Feel free to leave comments or suggestions and so on. We don't mind that. Obviously, if you leave something retarded, we'll tell you to bugger off. But
that's right.
We welcome suggestions. Don't be frightened.
I'll just ban you from the fucking channel, I'll be honest.
You've been warned, folks.
But anyway, and subscribe to these chaps' channels as well, which you will see underneath. So all the best for now, and we hope to see you soon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.